Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look. I'm Arabina Apia. Thanks so much for tuning in. The value-added tax cut on food is officially in effect, and for many Bahamians, it's a welcome shift at the checkout line. But don't exhale just yet, because U.S. tariffs are on the horizon, threatening to drive up import costs and stretch an already fragile supply chain. Tonight, we're breaking down what that really means, from supermarkets rethinking their sourcing to farmers and policymakers working to strengthen food security from the ground up. We take a closer look right after the break, so stay tuned. With the value-added tax cut now in place, Bahamians are already starting to see shifts at the checkout. Our very own Erin Scavella hit the ground to see how shoppers and retailers are responding to the change. Erin?
Thanks, Arabina. I'm here at Super Value, where the government's VAT reduction is taking effect to ease the cost of groceries on everyday Bahamians. But are local retailers ready? And how much relief can shoppers really expect?
We're just happy for the consumers that the government has taken this initiative to lower VAT on certain items. It's going to be something that the customers are going to appreciate, and we're always happy when our customers can get a little relief from those high prices that they've been experiencing.
So what does that mean at the checkout? Customers can enjoy lower prices. A 5% value-added tax is applied to all grocery store food, as well as items at gas stations and convenience stores, with the exception of deli-prepared foods, candy, and sugary drinks.
It is a great initiative, and I'm glad to see that we're looking after our Bahamians and the economy. You know, there's a lot of inflation going on that affects all aspects of the lifestyle. So the more you can get for the dollar is very appreciative. So looking forward to see some more initiatives like this in the future.
Just last week, Prime Minister Philip Davis toured grocery stores to speak directly with business owners about the implementation.
This is about putting money back in people's pockets. They're working hard with retailers to ensure real change. That change will be at the checkout counter, that people can feel and ensure that money is back into their pockets.
The VAT reduction is just one part of a larger effort to tackle rising costs. And while some hurdles remain, the goal is clear: more affordability for more Bahamians. For a closer look, I'm Erin Scavella. Back to you, Arabina.
Thanks so much, Erin. We'll have more of a closer look right after this.
You know, I want to make people laugh and cry.
You soon can be at CAPAS, the Bahamas School for the Creative and Performing Arts.
I want to be creative.
I want to do hair and makeup for movies.
I want to make those big sets for the stage.
I want to make radio dramas and podcasts.
I want to be a dancer.
Singing, dancing. You can learn them all at CAPAS, the new school for the creative and performing arts.
Lights, sound, camera, action.
Writing, singing, dancing. You can learn them all at CAPAS, the new school for the creative and performing arts.
I really want to be an animator.
I want to be famous!
Go online to register your interest, have your say, and learn more about CAPUS, the School for the Creative and Performing Arts.
I want to be a
Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. While the VAT cuts aim to ease the pressure at home, changes beyond our borders could complicate the picture. In this next story, our very own Preston Ferguson Jr. takes a look at how new U.S. tariffs might impact what ends up on our shelves and what that means for businesses trying to stay ahead of rising costs. Preston?
Recent U.S. tariffs are set to ripple through global trade, and the Bahamas is not immune.
As the Bahamas braces for the impact of these tariffs, concerns grow over rising costs and economic stability.
So the reality is that the Bahamas imports 90% of its goods. 80% of that 90% comes from the United States. And so any fluctuations in the market in the US will affect the Bahamas. And so if things are more expensive for American consumers, American businesses, American exporters, it means that the Bahamas will be hit by those. And so we expect that there will be some short-term fluctuations in the market where Bahamians can expect perhaps fluctuations in price if many of these tariffs that are proposed does come into effect.
To address these concerns, policymakers are exploring ways to reduce dependence on U.S. imports.
One of the government's major strategies and initiatives is the National Trade Diversification Program, where we are encouraging local stores, local retailers, importers, wholesalers to go directly to source markets to purchase products. The reality is that if we get from one supplier, we are at the mercy of that jurisdiction. But if we diversify our supply chain, we're able to get more cost-effective and quality products from around the world.
As the Bahamas navigates these evolving trade dynamics, our focus remains on protecting consumers and sustaining our economy. Reporting for A Closer Look, I'm Preston Ferguson Jr.
Thank you so much, Preston. We have more of A Closer Look right after the break, so stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Senator Randy Rule, Executive Chairman here at Consumer Protection Commission. Here at CPC, our mandate is to provide consumers with a louder voice with stronger rights. We are driven to bring resolution to all consumer complaints. Stay in contact with us through our social media platforms. And don't forget, if you have a complaint or concern, you can reach us on our 24-hour hotline, 357-7898.
When it comes to rising costs, what we import is only half the story. The other half, what we grow ourselves. Our very own Leah Cooper visits the farms and classrooms where the next generation of Bahamian food producers are already laying the groundwork for a more self-sufficient future. Leah?
Before the big lights of Expo and the big stage conversations on food policy, the future of the Bahamas food security lies right here. And in classrooms and gardens across the country, students aren't just growing crops, they're growing a movement.
At the Ministry of Education's 12th Annual Agricultural Science Exhibition, students from public schools across New Providence proudly showcase composting systems, vertical farms, and food lab experiments. It's all a part of an effort to turn early education into national transformation.
We have variety. We have dinosaur kale, we have cherry tomatoes, we have rosemary, we have seasonings, we have hot sauces, we have jams, tarts, all those good things that you like to indulge in.
It was actually nice because I get to use my hands, I get to work more, because usually I would just be tired or a little bit lazy. But now that I got into agriculture and stuff like that, I get to move around more.
A lot of persons are saying that, agriculture needs to be put in the schools. but we want them to know that agriculture is in the schools, and schools are doing very, very well, not only on New Providence, but also on the Family Islands as well. We just want them to know this is what is happening. Students are growing, students are rearing animals, students understand the importance of agricultural sciences, and they are involved and are excited to be a part of the program.
Just days before the expo, the Ministry of Agriculture hosted a press conference to officially launch Agri-Expo 2025, underlining the government's mission to empower Bahamians to grow what we eat and teach the next generation how to lead that charge.
This is more than just an event. It is a movement toward a stronger, more self-sufficient Bahamas.
At the 2025 Agribusiness Expo, Minister Jomo Campbell highlighted the government's efforts in funding school initiatives.
Our young people are the future of Bahamian agriculture. That is why we continue to support the school agriculture programs by donating essential supplies. Today, we will award 30 schools with resources to strengthen their agriculture initiatives. And soon, you will also hear more about the launch of the Agricultural Cadet Program.
From learning to grow food in recycled bottles to explaining soil health to strangers, these students aren't just participating, they're pioneering, and their curiosity is fueling a nationwide conversation about sustainability, resilience, and pride in producing what we consume.
From student gardens to national showcases, the Bahamas is proving that the future of food security lies within our youth. And based on what we've seen, we're in pretty good hands. I'm Leah Cooper for a closer look, sending it back to you in studio. You're wrapping up.
Thanks so much, Leah. We'll be back right after this, so stay tuned.
The one-stop shop for fashion designers, tailors, students, government agencies, junkedeurs, upholsters, event planners, and Bahamians with a sophisticated sense of style. Commonwealth Fabrics is here to provide everything you need, from the smallest notions to the most elegant and unique fabrics. Family and Bahamian owned since 1979. Commonwealth Fabrics is conveniently located in Palmdale to offer you the best in quality fabric and fashion notions. Come in and visit us today.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Dr. Leo Roll, CEO of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce. As the head of the organization representing businesses across the country, his insight is key to understanding how VAT policies and the threat of new tariffs are landing in the real world. Dr. Roll, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with the good news. The government has reduced VAT by 5%. Absolutely. It took effect on April 1st on food items. How impactful is this move for household budgets? And what does it signal about the government's commitment to its priorities, really?
Thank you for the question. So when you think about anyone really saving money, whether you're budgeting or not, that's a welcomed exception. And so when the government decided to reduce VAT to 5% on unprocessed food items, it was welcomed by the consumers, as well as the business community, because what it means is that savings can now be passed on to consumers and they can purchase more. And so it expands their purchasing potential. So when you think about a household, and think of a household of three, a mother, father, and their child, they are now able to expand that dollar potential. And so when they go into the store, rather than at 10%, they're paying 5%. Now, there are some other threats that may not see that savings passed on to the consumer. And some of those threats, as we mentioned, are inflation, but the tariffs that are being imposed. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're watching to see how that is being implemented and also how consumers are using that extra 5% cushioning. to put or to reallocate funding elsewhere where they can actually save.
And you touched on it a little bit, but I want us to discuss it a bit more because this policy obviously didn't happen in a vacuum. So from your vantage point, what does this VAT reduction tell us about, the government's responsiveness to cost of living concerns, which are everywhere? I mean, we're talking about, people's ability to really feed themselves and their families.
So I think it represents the government's, or it demonstrates the government's commitment toward ensuring that people are able to spend more and also save more. What you see is the government's push towards creating an equitability among classes. And so persons are now able to go into the store and get food items, which are the essentials at 5%. But when you think about looking at those various aspects of prices in the stores, now the government has a push towards controlling or doing what they can control. And so inflation is done and happens in a number of ways, and the government is doing their part by eliminating or reducing VAT because that's what they can control. And so if you reduce to 5%, you're then able to help consumers. It also shows their push towards helping the nation to feed themselves. Another thing that we're hoping that they will do is encourage persons to grow locally, to buy locally, so that we can eliminate some of the imports. But we know that we produce and manufacture very little, and so that's a challenge in and of itself. But the reduction shows that the government's commitment. They are going to take about a $50 million hit that was announced by the Minister of Economic Affairs. And so one of the challenges is, where will that money come from? Because anyone who knows anything about budgeting can determine that if I had allocated for this set of money to come in and it's not, then I have to shift from somewhere else to make up that lost fall. And so that's what we're wondering where it will happen.
I know the Chamber has been a long-time advocate for public-private sector collaboration and partnership. How would you describe the current relationship between the business community, the Chamber, and the government at this time? You've been in this role for almost a year now. Yeah. So what, from your vantage point, what is the relationship, the current relationship?
Every relationship has its ups and downs. There's no perfect relationship. I think we're making progress towards establishing mutual respect, mutual beneficial propositions, and the understanding that we can only work together for the good of the business community. And so a lot of times the business standpoint is usually not the popular one with individuals. And you see that when they respond to some of the things, some of the positions that the Chamber has on certain things, whether it be maternity leave extension or introduction of paternity leave or the increase of minimum wage. All of these things are very sensational because we understand the standpoint of the consumer, but also you have to understand the standpoint of the business. Even with the extra holiday, they're thinking of aspects relative to making sure that the consumer is happy. But we from the Chamber of Commerce have to make sure that the businesses are not disenfranchised. So they say that the art of the good negotiation is when both sides leave the table equally happy or equally unhappy. And so we work together in the confines that we have, but we think that we've gotten a pretty good footing. We have a quarterly meeting with a lot of the ministries, the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education. We have a quarterly with the Ministry of Economic Affairs. We sit on the board, a number of government boards, but we also work with the Trade Diversification Program. So PPPs or public-private partnerships are important to us, and you see that coming out in all of the initiatives that we have and the collaboration that we have with government agencies.
Let's turn to international pressures, because the tariffs that are on the table for the United States could increase the import. We've talked about how much we actually import a little. So, from your perspective, how prepared are we? How prepared do you think the government and the private sector are we to sort of navigate, some of the challenges that may be incoming?
I think when you look at the nuances of the government in the U.S. and the challenge of not knowing and the uncertainty, any level of preparedness could not be enough. And so we are trying to prepare, but we're also grappling to understand where it's going because it's so fluid. One day it's something and then the other it's something else. But we had a meeting with the Charge d'Affaires last week, and that meeting, on top of our list was tariffs, so the $1 million imposition on Chinese-built vessels. We're also working with the government through the Trade Commission to understand what those tariffs will look like. What will that mean? Because yes, you reduce VAT to 5% on food items, but if there's an added cost to import them, then that cost is still going to be shifted back on the consumer because the business cannot sustain it.
Right.
And so when we work with our government partners and with the international partners, we work in a way where we look at the challenges that we have. And of course, one of them is tariffs, but one is the imposition of the $1 million port call for those ships built in China. And that can be done in a number of ways, whether the government seeks to reduce its taxation on some of the imports so that it can alleviate that cost, or we diversify our channels such that we look for opportunities outside of the US. You saw an inbound from Canada with the Chamber of Commerce. You'll see an outbound to India about next week or so, an outbound to Africa, an outbound to London, an outbound to South America. And it's not because we want to eliminate the US as a trading partner, because almost 90% of the goods that we have come from the US. But what we're saying is we have to be ready and anticipate some of the changes that are coming. And so the only way to do that is to look at areas to diversify trade, and also to continue to work with our partners to see how best we can eliminate some of the costs.
You spoke about, the push to address these sort of uncertainties. I know one of the major pushes has been this push for food security through programs like the Golden Yoke, to strengthen production of what we have here on this side. Can you tell me from your perspective, how important is that specific shift?
Absolutely important. We find, apart from the Golden Yoke, I was at the Small Business Development Center for a period, and so there are a number of entrepreneurs, especially in the fishing and farming industry, where there were opportunities for grants that were made available. This incentivizes persons to not only grow locally, but to shop locally. And so you see Golden Yoke, you see some of the farming initiatives. What we're looking at, though, and what one of the biggest concerns are for us from the Chamber of Commerce, but also from the Trade Commission, is the selectiveness of farming. So at present, farming seems to be haphazard. So everyone can grow onions and everyone does. But what that means is there becomes a glut on the market. So markets can have two different conditions. It can be a scarcity or it can be a glut. What happens is if all of the farmers now go into farming onions when there is a need for perhaps tomatoes, then no one farms tomatoes. And so a delineation to show who's farming what, when are they farming it, what is the requirement, letters of intent from some international companies, but also local hotels, etc., to be able to source products locally. But there also has to be a scaling. So if I'm a hotel and I reach out to you 1 week and you have onions and you don't have it the other, then that becomes a challenge. And so the consistency of product, the quality of product, but also the injection and making sure that these initiatives, when they launch, are sustainable, because we've seen variations of things like the Golden Yoke, etc., before that were unsuccessful. And so I think it calls for us to be more prudent in how we initiate those.
Well, I guess my final question then, Dr. Roll, is what specific initiatives in these filing moments can you speak to that show the Chamber is supporting its members through this very transitional period? And what would you rate the level of partnership in terms of, what the Chamber does and the business community and the government and all of the stakeholders?
That's a great question. I think a few of the initiatives we have, definitely the Trade Diversification Initiative. And what that does is it looks for various avenues for us to import rather than the middleman, because in the US we're importing imported goods. So rather than importing something that was made in South America already, why not just go directly to South America? We're also working with our partners like the US Embassy, like the Trade Commission, and directly with the government to ensure that the voices of the business community are heard. Sometimes they're not, as I said, always the popular opinion, because of course businesses don't vote as they say people do. And so we have to work in tandem to understand that, yes, at the end of the day, you want the persons or business people to feel like they are welcomed, like they are appreciated, but the business community also has to have some level of say. We're also working to try to look at price cost measures, or price cost measures. One of the persons that we're taking to India with us is Bahamas Customs, because we know that they otherwise influence the rate of goods that are coming in, concessions, exemptions. And so we're hoping that while they're on this trip, they can see the areas where they can tell the government, well, we were at this trip with the Chamber. Here's where we think we should cut costs, where we should eliminate some of the taxes, etc. And so those are some of the initiatives. I don't know, when I speak about the relationship, it's a work in progress, I'll say that.
Well, Dr. Earl, I want to thank you so much for being here. This has been a very insightful conversation. I think Bahamians are going to be grappling with a lot of the uncertainty, but we're all helping each other navigate that, right?
It certainly has. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, we've talked policy, pricing, and production, but for most Bahamians, it all comes down to what they can afford to put on their plates. So in this edition of ACL's On the Go, we go back to our very own Erin Scavella, who hit the streets to hear how rising costs and shifting priorities are shaping the way people shop, cook, and eat right now. Erin?
From fresh produce to poultry, rising grocery prices are a hot topic. But with the government's recent VAT reduction and increased investment in local farming, the goal is simple: make food more affordable and more Bahamian. Many Bahamians are starting to notice the effects of the VAT reduction at the register.
Yeah, I noticed a little change, a little decrease in my overall total.
Yes, I think it will create that balance in your pocket since it's been initiated.
Local support is growing for these initiatives, especially when it means cutting down on costs. But some shoppers say they hope to see more price reductions straight across the board.
It's a save, but not much of a save.
It should help my grocery bill, and it will help it, but it needs to go down even further than the 5%.
I spend a lot of money on food. Before that, my cupboard used to be full on the amount I spend. It's like I'm spending double now.
But with rising global costs and instability abroad, many believe building local food systems is the right move.
They need to implement it in school systems so when children are growing up, they'll know how to plant and grow their own food. That way, we won't be so dependent on exports.
Whether you're buying local, looking for savings, or just trying to feed your family, what's on your plate tells a powerful story. For a closer look, I'm Erin Scavella. Back to you, Rabina.
Thank you so much, Erin. Stay tuned. There's more after the break. Hello everyone. Be sure to tune in right here every Monday night at 8 p.m. for another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. I'm Arabina Apia, your host for this season, and I'll see you right here every Monday night at 8 p.m. on cable channel 212. Tonight's episode has reminded us that food is really a reflection of our standard of living, what we have access to, what we can afford, and in many ways, what we're able to grow and produce ourselves. The value-added tax cut is a meaningful move, but real food security will take continued investment in people, in policy, and in the systems that help us feed ourselves. Till next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Arabina Apia. Good night, everyone.